I want to say we're live. Yeah, there we go. All right, I was waiting for Doug's pin to get it going. All right, so thanks everyone for joining today. This is the State of Hedera Q4 2022 Analyst Call. Excited to be here today and happy to talk all things Hedera. Before we dive into the report, want to make some introductions. I'll go first. My name is Nick Garcia. I'm an analyst here at Messari. I focus on base layers. Either Shayne or Lionel.
And I'm Shayne Higdon. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the HBAR Foundation, focused on helping build the ecosystem in and around Hedera.
And Lionel Chocron, I'm the Chief Product Officer at Swords Labs for the Hedera network, so focusing on the product and engineering work with the community to build and improve the Hedera network.
All right, awesome. Got two of the senior leaders in the Hedera ecosystem here today, so very excited. So why don't we get started by first giving a quick high-level overview of what is Hedera. So we could scroll down to the primer on Hedera. Either Shayne or Lionel, or both of you actually. Can you please give a high-level overview of what is Hedera, what makes it different? As people have read the report, they'll see that there are the network services, we have a unique governance model, the HBAR token plays a unique role in the ecosystem. So if you guys could just talk about everything that makes Hedera what it is.
Sure, absolutely. I'll take a first pass. So Hedera is a public permissioned proof-of-stake blockchain network, which has a pretty unique governance model. We have a governance of 28 global organizations, mostly large global enterprises, but also Web3 leaders and prestigious universities in the world. And that group is what we call the Hedera Governing Council. So there are members, thought leaders across the world on all the continents, representing over 10 different market verticals. And they really bring a truly global, decentralized perspective of use cases, market requirements, and regulatory trends. The council members are also running the validator nodes. So that's why we call it a permissioned network. And of course, it will be a path towards eventually a fully permissionless network. From a development perspective, the development of the network itself, of the technology, is really directly informed by the community, for the community. And we have a process called the Hedera Improvement Proposals, HIP, H-I-P. And that is the mechanism by which the community is publicly proposing, discussing, debating changes, improvements, new features, new integrations, whether they are sitting at the network layer itself or above the network layer for tooling and frameworks that are being built on the network. So it's really community driven from a development perspective. You talked about services. We have what we call Hedera Network Services, which are the core services that developers are using to build decentralized application. There are like three primary services. We'll talk about them later. A token service, a smart contract service, and a consensus service. And we have what we call a supporting service, which is the cryptocurrency service, which is kind of a foundational service that is being used and called by the other services. So we'll talk a bit more about it later on the call. And lastly, the underlying consensus algorithm that is powering the network is called the hash graph consensus algorithm. It's a very, very powerful, efficient algorithm that offers very high throughput, a network running at 10,000 transactions per second, fair ordering of transactions, very, very low carbon footprint, and a very low latency on the consensus itself. So where the transactions are reaching consensus in a few seconds. So that's in a nutshell, in a few minutes, the primer on the network itself. Yeah.
Shayne, anything to add? Again, I covered most of it, but
no, he was comprehensive. So what he said.
Yeah, that was great. All right. Awesome. So thanks for the high level. So I think that sets the stage as to what is Hedera and why it is a unique ecosystem today. If we could scroll down to the financial and network overview system, we can kind of get into some of the nitty gritty of the numbers. So for those who are tuning in, if you go to Messari, you can see the report and get into the numbers. But I think the high level takeaway, right, is Hedera had a very successful fourth quarter, despite the FTX collapse, despite the end of a 2022 that, culminated arguably the worst year in the industry's history. Hedera saw an increase across all of the sectors, right? So let's get into some of those sectors now. So we could scroll down a little bit more. I think we would like to start talking about the Hedera DeFi ecosystem, okay? And a reason for some of that boom in the fourth quarter was the launch of two new DEXs. You'll see there we got HeliSwap and BubbleSwap. And that follows the launch of the first DEX in Q3. Okay, which was Saucer Swap. So now we've got three DEXs on the network. We've got a DeFi ecosystem that is beginning to grow. So could one of you talk about the Hedera DeFi ecosystem today, anything that's caught your attention, and maybe where it's going in the future? Because I know there are a lot more projects in the pipeline as well.
Sure. As we sit here today, we've got just shy of $160 million in TVL across all of the DEXs that are running. That is up significantly from just a quarter ago. We look at our DEXs split between Hedera native DEXs like Saucer Swap and BubbleSwap to EVM compatible DEXs like HeliSwap, and then multi-chain DEXs like Pangolin, which recently went live on the network. What's great about all of these DEXs is that they're really strong teams. And most importantly, they listen to the community to iterate really quickly in and around the products to benefit the community. So as the community voices different enhancements, fixes, bug fixes, etc., they really try to address those as quickly as possible. That success is demonstrated by the Hedera community's adoption of these DEXs and platforms, and that's been exciting to see.
Yep, so that's the DEXs today, right? So the way we're calculating TVL, total value locked these days, we're not including liquid staking metrics for a variety of reasons. But if we scroll down a little more, we'll see that if you include liquid staking, right, if you include that bucket of DeFi protocols, then you can start looking at Stater, right? And Stater is one of the OG DeFi protocols on Hedera. It's got the largest TVL when compared with the other three DEXs. And Hedera is actually the largest network in terms of TVL for Stater. So could one of you please talk about Stater, its role in the ecosystem? It's been there since day one. Anything worth noting about this strong protocol?
Sure. To the point that you're making, I mean, my number of almost 160 million does include liquid staking. We do include liquid staking in our calculation for obvious reasons. Stater really took a chance as being the first major DeFi protocol on Hedera. At the time, you may recall Hedera native staking wasn't live yet. So there was really a big gap that needed to be filled for the ecosystem to contribute to the network's security. So similarly to other DEXs, Stater really kind of set the tone. The Stater team's product iteration has been impressive. They're currently on version 3 of their platform, which connects directly now to Hedera's native staking. So this means that those who stake on Stater can also participate in both the liquidity of native staking and the native HBAR token that Stater has, in addition to contributing to securing the network. Outside of Hedera, the Stater platform is a modular staking solution, which means they can deploy on any other network, which is what they've done and which is what we like. We do believe this is going to be a multi-chain world. So we think this multi-chain approach is only beneficial to Hedera as it exposes the Hedera community to new audiences like the Polygon community.
Yeah, and I think Shayne hinted at a big development that we're going to cover later on this report is the launch of staking, or more the development of staking, right? Hedera's got this multi-phase staking rollout, and it's going along smoothly. So we'll touch on that later in this report. So that's the Hedera DeFi ecosystem today, right? It's still in the early stages, but we can see there's some solid development. So let's hop down now to the NFT and gaming portion of the report. if you look at the chart right here, there has been a growth in Hedera NFTs and gaming as well. We list out on the report a number of upcoming either projects or mints or collections, anything pertaining to this section of the ecosystem. So could one of you talk at a high level, how is this, the NFT and the gaming sector developing? Anything that stands out to you, anything we should keep in mind looking forward here?
What's been exciting to me to see is you can watch this NFT community just organically build on top of the network. I mean, Lionel and his team and the community have built capabilities to make it easier to mint and to associate various token types to the NFTs. And it's just organically grown. What we've done as a foundation is really tried to provide ecosystem grants to the likes of Zeus and others to build marketplaces from which to trade. So the NFT community is incredibly vibrant and passionate. Just last week, this is pretty interesting. The most recent Dead Pixels drop pushed Zeus Marketplace, which is a Hedera NFT marketplace, to the top 5 marketplaces on DApp Radar. So congratulations to that team. And I think that we're going to continue to see the kind of volume and success. Hedera's NFT ecosystem is also differentiated, though, based on the diversity of industries and verticals. So in addition to the vibrant NFT or profile picture PFP community, Hedera is also the home to LG Art Lab. Many of you know LG is an electronics provider and so many other businesses. They've got an initiative called LG Art Lab, which is a leader in contemporary digital art. So they've got these picture TVs. You can now buy NFTs, and it looks like a piece of art inside your home or office. In addition to that, digital gaming collectibles through Lithos and the Ashfall team. Ashfall is a game and a comic book and an NFT that it's a AAA game that will be released by the Lithos team. So this month, both LG Art Lab and Lithos have collection launches. Since we talked about Art Lab last time, we'll focus this time on Lithos and their Ashfall game. Ashfall is a AAA game, which means high budget, incredible team launching on Hedera in the future. In advance of the launch, however, and this is what excites me because I love watching entrepreneurs really test and try to determine and build new ways of emotional connection with their user base. And so in advance of the launch of the game, they're tapping into their comic book and gaming heritage and partnering with a TikTok influencer, a guy by the name of Michael Lee, who has over 53 million followers. And they're doing weekly, small little episodes on TikTok that really chronicle the story of Ash Naranjo. Naturally, with each episode, there's a collectible. That collectible has an issue of a comic book. So viewers who own each of the 5 issues will then be eligible for a 6th token-gated collectible. And so as of right now, as of yesterday, they've had over 2 million views or maybe 2 million downloads of their NFT. And so to watch this kind of explosive growth in a matter of a couple of weeks is incredibly encouraging and all on Hedera.
Yeah, that's really exciting, right? And I think, that kind of foreshadows what we can expect more of in this NFT and gaming ecosystem, right? If you look at the report, we list out, again, a bunch of different projects or collectibles, whatnot, that have either recently announced or recently gone live. So expect a lot more activity in this sector of the ecosystem moving forward. So that is the DeFi, NFT, and gaming, more of the high level, okay? But we touched on it a little earlier. Hedera has the Hedera Network Services, okay? And this is where we start getting into the unique aspects of the ecosystem. Lionel, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but do you want to give another high level of what the Hedera Network Services are? Just real quick, there's some SDKs that make it easier for developers with a bunch of different languages. Again, you've got the hash graph algorithm. Just another high-level overview of what the Hedera Network Services are.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we have like 4 services, I would say 3 primary services. The Hedera Token Service, which allows you to natively mint and manage fungible and non-fungible token. You have the Hedera Smart Contract Service, which is a traditional EVM fully compliant, smart contract capability to, the way you would do it on Ethereum, for example. You have a Hedera consensus service, which is really a time-stamping, verifiable ordering of events. And I'll come to that in a second. I think we'll deep dive a bit more on this one, but a very, very unique service that actually is really leveraging the underlying hash graph consensus that we talked about. So it gives us a very, very differentiated play on this one. And then we have a supporting service, which is a cryptocurrency, which allows you to do transactions of tokens, but also creating an account, managing an account, clearing an account. So more of the underlying, I would say, organical capabilities you need on the network. So all of them can be called through a series of SDKs in different languages, Java, JavaScript, and Go, and so forth. And so we have quite a few different SDKs supported and managed by Swords Labs and the community, which are available for anybody to call the services as they see fit.
Awesome. So that's a high level description of what the Hedera network services are. So let's get into more of the specifics of each of the services and take a look at some of the numbers. So we can scroll down. The first one I have listed here is the Hedera consensus service. Okay. And if you look at the chart, you can see just an absolutely massive uptick in the daily number of users. Now, that was primarily due to the launch of staking. Again, we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, the Hedera network service here, I have another example here. It's used by Avery Dennison, who I believe is one of the council members. So we're seeing some significant growth here in the consensus service, okay? Are we expecting this to continue moving forward? Any other developments within the consensus service that people should be looking out for?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, let me restate what the Hedera consensus service is about. It's really the ability to provide a verifiable timestamping and ordering of events for any Web2 or Web3 application. So it's a very unique service leveraging our hash graph consensus algorithm. And it's very relevant for any use case where you need to prove data integrity. Whether you need to prove the integrity of a transaction between two entities, the integrity of a message exchange between two entities, the integrity of a document that you have recorded and maybe shared between two entities, any kind of use case where you want to prove the data integrity of something, the Hedera consensus service is very relevant. And the kind of use cases that you see are the tracking and tracing of products along the supply chain, the time stamping and notarizing of legal and official documents. You see, proving ownership of intellectual property, all these kind of use cases where you need to use a trusted network that is able to give you a time-stamped proof, cryptographic proof of an event. That's what the consensus service is about. And we've seen enterprises very interested in that service, and they've been testing implementations through 2022. So we've seen companies coming, asking us, frankly, testing on testnet, but also on mainnet, because the performance that we have advertised and delivered on that service are pretty substantial in terms of 10,000 transactions per second. The cost of a transaction is a penny of a dollar. So cheap that actually you can think in scale. IoT use cases are very relevant. In that case, you could have millions of transactions per day, billions of transactions per year, and still make it very manageable from a cost perspective. And so what you've seen in Q4, the kind of doubling of transactions, I know we're already mid Q1, so if you allow me, Nick, I'm just going to kind of project a little bit what we're seeing in Q1. But what you're seeing in Q4 as the doubling of transactions is materializing in Q1 with a rapid acceleration of HES transactions, with the use cases from enterprises moving to production on mainnet. And in your report, you mentioned Avery Dennison. Avery Dennison is a council member, a global firm leader in product identity and labeling in the supply chain industry. And they built a cloud platform called atma.io, which they launched, don't want to say anything wrong, but I think about a year and a half to 2 years ago. And this Atma.io cloud platform is a new service that they are offering to track products along the supply chain of their customers and record associated carbon emissions for each connected product. They have incorporated the consensus service, worked on it for the past, frankly, 6 months to 9 months, and did a lot of testing on the mainnet to actually turn it live on mainnet, not in Q4, but actually in early Q1, which is what I'm saying. It's materializing now in a transaction in Q1. And we're very, very pleased to see that, the number of transactions per second on consensus service has reached, on average, about 500 transactions per second over the past month. And we see that we expect that to be steady volume of transaction, at least, for the coming foreseeable future and years. So very exciting, which actually was one of the contributors. HCS was one of the contributors to reach, as of yesterday, and Zenobia, correct me if I'm mistaken now, 4 billion transactions on the network was one of the milestones we achieved yesterday. And we'll very likely see that acceleration of utilization being driven by all the services, but the consensus service being one of them.
Yeah, so adoption for the consensus service is on the rise without a doubt. And again, I think what's really exciting there is the enterprise adoption, right? I mean, Hedera positions itself to appeal to all people, right, in all levels, but I think the enterprise adoption is where you see significant levels of just growth and whatnot. So that's really exciting. So looking forward to seeing those numbers when the Q1 report comes out. So that's the Hedera consensus service. Let's move down to the Hedera crypto service. So Lionel, you gave, or Shayne, whomever, you gave a description of this earlier, but if you could just touch on this. I think you may have mentioned that it's kind of a complementary service. Did I understand that correctly? And if not, correct me, please. And yeah, any other developments that you're seeing within here as well.
Yes, so we call it a supporting service. In some ways, it's a foundational service that is working in conjunction with other services, especially the token service. And that service allows you to perform basic operations on the network, transactions of fungible, non-fungible tokens, managing of accounts, creating, updating, clearing accounts, and so forth. So it's a very core service that is actually, as I said, interconnected, interoperable with other services. So we've seen, that service continues to be, of course, heavily used. I don't want to repeat what Shayne said from a DeFi adoption perspective, because a lot of what we're seeing in terms of the growth of utilization of that service was triggered by the different launches of DEXs, starting with SursSwap more in Q3 timeframe, but also sustained in Q4 with the launches of the 2 new DEXs, EliSwap and BubbleSwap, and reaching now an all-time high of 28 million transactions in Q4. So pretty solid growth.
Yeah, solid growth, again, driven, the DeFi ecosystem was a contributor to this growth. And with more projects launching, right, across both DeFi, NFT, and gaming, I think we're going to expect this service, as well as the token service, to continue to see increased levels of adoption. So that's the Hedera crypto service. Let's move down to the smart contract service here. So, I mean, look, there's another significant levels of adoption here as well. So the smart contract service in February had the launch of smart contracts 2.0. And you can see beginning in April, there was an uptick in activity. And then starting in the second half of the year, it just kind of exploded upwards. So could one of you provide a high-level overview of what is the smart contract service? What do we think is driving this growth? And then again, anything to note relating to it. I'm sure the DEXs and the NFTs are contributing to this, but again, worth rehashing.
Yeah, so the Hedera smart contract service is really, I would say, more traditional, but much more performing and lower cost, more efficient, fully EVM compliant smart contract service that developers can use to build decentralized applications that scale with Solidity smart contract on Hedera. So from a utilization perspective, clearly, DEXs have been a key driver. We talked about it again previously, and we see that sustained growth. We expect that actually to continue with more and more demand for different kind of smart contracts, not just for DeFi. This is a service that we're heavily investing in. That's been a big chunk. I would not put a number, but if I were to say 50%, I would probably not be too far away from that. Probably 50% of the community investment in terms of HIPs and also engineering development, I would say, at the network layer and above the network layer has been really focused on the smart contract ecosystem. And to give you a couple of examples of where we are investing heavily, first of all, we are investing significantly in creating a JSON RPC relay, which is one of the HIP the community has been driving, so that the Ethereum wallets like MetaMask and the Ethereum tools like Hardhat, for example, can work seamlessly on Hedera. And so that JSON RPC is very similar to what you've seen on other EVM chains like offered by Synapse or Infura. It really provides the same set of APIs that the Ethereum tools expect. So it makes it very seamless to be able to run and manage and frankly debug and use all the tooling you would expect on the Ethereum ecosystem to use it on the Hedera network. So for that JSON RPC, we have a hosted implementation, open source, free to use for the community, by the community, which we call hashio.io. But we're also discussing with a few partners to host a commercial offering, which is going to be more enterprise grade kind of support with 24/7 SLA and so forth. So one major element of investment in Q4, started in Q4 and continuing in Q1, is that JSON RPC relay. The second component is the enhancing of all the smart contract traceability and debuggability. We have a couple of HIPs, again, all driven through public discussion on the Hedera improvement proposal. So the HIP 513, which is really adding smart contract traceability extensions on one side, and we have another HIP 584, which is going to allow to run the EVM on the Mirror node so that we can perform read-only queries from the Mirror node directly. This is a major improvement for the users. I know some of our very embedded users of smart contracts are waiting for that second one, because it's going to make it much more efficient and cost-effective to run queries on smart contract using that EVM on the Mirror node. And so it's going to make it very, very competitive in many ways and much more effective than the current version that we have today. And that should be coming in the coming few months. So a lot of investment in that space. And the goal is really to drive and increase the focus on Ethereum ecosystem compatibility. When I say Ethereum ecosystem, I mean the tooling, the frameworks, the libraries, and so forth, so that it becomes very, very seamless to go from one network to another.
Yep. So a lot of investment in the smart contract service. We saw smart contracts 2.0. I think we can expect a lot more to come. And this will make lives much easier for developers, right? All of the kind of technical stuff that Lionel talked about will make lives for developers. And as I like to say, development activity is a leading indicator. Most things tend to be lagging indicators, but if we have a leading indicator, we can expect future growth. So that is the Hedera smart contract service. Be on the lookout for that. We'll quickly touch on the Hedera token service. If you could provide a high-level overview of it. I think the drivers of growth are going to be very similar to what we've mentioned, so I don't think we need to rehash it. But if you could just describe what it is, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so it's a service that allows you to easily and cost-effectively configure, mint, and manage native, and I insist on the word native, fungible and non-fungible tokens on the network. And so it's a very, very efficient way, without having to use a smart contract if you don't need to actually build at scale and manage at scale at very, very low cost fungible and non-fungible tokens. And one of the drivers was, of course, the growth on non-fungible tokens that Shayne explained earlier on the call. Again, that's an area we continue to invest heavily. We've been delivering a few improvements in Q4 driven and proposed by the community. One of them is the ability to actually interoperate between the token service and a smart contract service. So in some ways, making it the best of both worlds, where you have a native token that you can use for its native capability, performance, cost, and everything. And you can extend it with a smart contract to add programmability to your native token. So you are basically enhancing the capabilities of your token, native token, to be managed by a smart contract layer. Very innovative way of doing it. You could, again, have a contract completely native. You could have a token completely native. Could have a token fully built on a smart contract if you want to, or you could have a combination of both, or you can add some programmability to a native token and maximize on performance, effectiveness, efficiency, and so forth. So that's one of the HIPs we delivered, HIPs 514, sorry. A second example of request by the community, which we delivered in Q4 also, was extending the auto account creation for native tokens built on Hedera. We had that capability before for HBAR transactions, and the community rightfully pointed out that there would be value to extend that capability for fungible and non-fungible token. Again, HIP 542 was one of the key ones that we delivered in Q4 for the token service. So we continue to invest in it. We are on the roadmap, actually fast forwarding a little bit for 2023. We're looking at semi-fungible token and quite a few different variations that we are going to enable at some point in 2023. And that's, again, based on a discussion with the community as we speak now.
Fantastic. So that's the Hedera token service in a nutshell, and that is the Hedera network services. So we looked at the quantitative metrics of the ecosystem, right? And again, we saw some pretty solid growth, especially in the fourth quarter, which is even more impressive given the FTX collapse and everything else. We talked about the HIPs, right? So I think that's a good transition point moving over to the qualitative section of the report. We'll start looking with the governance of Hedera. Okay, so we touched on it earlier. Hedera has this Hedera Governing Council, and that is a group of, geographically industry diverse companies that currently are supporting the network. Okay, so if one of you could please explain what the Hedera Governing Council is, how it works. I note here that this was in Q4, so it says we have 27 members. Hedera actually just announced the 28th member now in Q1, so I think we can talk about that as well. So could we talk about the Governing Council, what it is, how it works, what is the plan to decentralize the network? If we can get going there. Oh, Shayne, I think having trouble hearing you there.
Yeah, I was on mute so that you guys didn't hear any background noise. Sorry about that. I think that I'll add, and I'll talk about this, and then Lionel can add as he sees fit. I think it's important that when we talk about decentralization, to be specific about what we mean. We see various things being said in the community because we've got enterprise organizations on our council that in some way we're still very centralized. And I think there's two separate categories of decentralization that are important. And Mance and Lehman have been talking about this since the beginning of time. And so I'm just leveraging, in many ways, their words and hoping to be able to describe it adequately here. The two separate categories of decentralization are one, governance, and then second, transaction ordering. And so for governance, how many different entities, and this is people or organizations, are involved in making decisions on the product roadmap, the pricing of services, payment of rewards, or other governance related decisions? And then, as importantly, are all of these entities known by name, or can they be anonymous? If they're anonymous, there's no way to be able to tell and determine how decentralized the governance truly is, because the same anonymous actor could have multiple machines, right? Therefore, consolidating voting power amongst a few. For example, if voting rights are associated with a governance token, as an example, then a single actor can increase their influence by buying or earning additional tokens, which leads to the consolidation of rights and increased centralization. So for us, where we've got 39 term limited organizations, all of them are known organizations. We publicly announced them, right? In addition to that, all of the council members minutes are publicly disclosed. They're actually hashed on Hedera using the consensus service. And each member then has a single vote to ensure fairness, stability, and truly decentralized governance making. Even in the LLC membership agreement, the companies must sign to join the council, and it's publicly hashed on the consensus service. So this is very, very different than any other layer one in the industry. So then when you take the second point, which is transaction ordering, what's the minimum number of entities required to the order of transactions on the network? So at least in 2021, I'm not sure about 2022 if this had changed much, but Bitcoin had a handful of mining organizations, so often 5 or fewer, that controlled more than 50% of the hashing power of the network, which is enough to dictate the order of transactions. So as of 2021, just 3 mining pools controlled 47% of its hashing power. 2 mining pools control almost 48% of Ethereum's hashing power. So when you think about that, both claim to be permissionless as an advantage. I'm just simply not sure that it's an advantage. If the network allows anonymous node operators, then it's impossible to know to what degree any given entity controls the hashing power of the network. So now, setting that stage, for us, we've been in phase 1 for a while. We've moved into phase 2, or moving into phase 2. Phase 1 for us was requiring more than 2/3 of the council to agree on the ordering of transactions. And every council member has equal weight in their vote. So every council member is publicly known by name, and we can say for certain that the transaction ordering is decentralized. This is already, with that instance, more decentralized than Bitcoin and Ethereum. Phase 2 is going to add publicly identifiable community nodes, and many of you know that and Lionel can speak to this to the extent he would like. Community nodes was a bit delayed, but we still are very focused on making sure that community nodes are able to come to the network, and only there will there be a high degree of certainty that consolidation of stake is unlikely as anonymous nodes are added to the network. So both the Hedera network and its governance model and technical ordering of transactions was designed from the ground up to embody the ideals of sustainable decentralization. So to that end, the last point I will make is that as we continue to decentralize, we've added a council member in Q4, Aberdeen. Aberdeen is an asset management company. August of last year, they had acquired a stake in a company called Archax, which is the UK's first regulated digital security exchange, as a part of their overall strategy to continue to tokenize their funds. The second part of that was to then become a part of a DLT because of the structural inefficiencies that existed in the fund management industry. And they want to tokenize their money market funds, their real estate funds, and we're excited to see what they do. They've already been instrumental. They've jumped right in, actively participated in all the council meetings, the subcommittee meetings. They've made introductions to some very big financial organizations, to us, to the HBAR Foundation. And so we're excited about their engagement. And while it's not Q4, it is big news that I'm sure everybody is aware of now, which is in Q1, we did announce Dell having joined the council. Incredibly large organization. Much of the internet runs on Dell. And so for them, it was really important to join something like Hedera because they have already been engaged in this idea of data provenance. They believe that there are, this next year, there are going to be, 30 billion devices across the world, over 2.5 million applications. And the idea of data and data provenance, its origin, where did it come from? Where has it moved? How has it changed over time? They wanted to create this data confidence fabric. And so to do that, they initially seeded, along with a few other organizations, something called Project Alvarium, which is a framework and an SDK to build a data confidence fabric. more generally speaking, a trust fabric, to making sure that the data from devices and applications is measurable with certain trust characteristics. Imagine the amount of data that we generate each and every day, and that using something like a DCF, a data confidence fabric, and being built on and supporting a blockchain ledger like Hedera is incredibly important. And so we're excited to have them aboard.
Yeah, that's big news. And I think you brought up a really cool perspective in terms of like the decentralization, how Hedera stacks up to these other leading ecosystems. Lionel, anything you want to add there? I know Shayne briefly hinted on some public nodes. I don't know if you want to touch on that, or anything else you want to contribute
No,
to.
not specifically. Shayne said it. Moving to what we call community nodes in 2023 is a priority. So we have, the team and the community working on it as we speak. And so it's been a bit delayed with everything we've had, collectively to contribute, but it will happen in 2023, and we'll deliver very likely the first phase in H1.
Looking forward to that. All right, so that's the Hedera governance structure, and I think some really cool perspective from Shayne there in terms of what decentralization really is. So let's keep it moving here. Let's go down to the Treasury, so we can briefly touch on this, okay? So earlier in 2022, Hedera released, it may have been late 2021, I don't know. Hedera released a Hedera Treasury management report, just giving the community and the people transparency into what is happening with the Hedera Treasury. And Hedera just released another one, okay? It was released in late December, I believe. So you can see there in the visual, these are the current allocations of the Hedera Treasury. And at the end of the year, 25.3 billion HBAR, which is slightly over 50% of tokens, are in circulation. And again, Hedera did not have any exposure to FTX or to Genesis. Anything you guys want to touch on the Treasury? I don't know if this necessarily includes the ecosystem funds, but there's been a lot of ecosystem funds raised. We touch on them briefly in the report. Anything about the Treasury? Anything about the ecosystem funds, the HBAR token?
So I'll just say a very, very quick word, and neither Shayne nor I are, part of the Hedera governance, and so where the Treasury management is being governed by definition. So as you know, Hedera has a new CFO, Betsabe Botaitis, who's coming from the financial services background and was recently honored as the top honoree by NASDAQ at their Latina Disruptors event. And so Betsabe being on board now, she's going to continue to work towards bringing the financial reporting discipline that you see in other industries. And you'll see Hedera continuing to evolve reporting going forward to achieve more public transparency, which is very, very important for Hedera. Has been important on day one, and Betsabe will probably take it to an even higher level because it's a very important part of trust, and it will be required to move the industry forward. So probably that's all I'm going to say on Treasury today. I think if Nick wanted to deep dive further on Treasury on a future call, Betsabe would be a perfect speaker for that. She's a CFO of the Hedera governance model.
Yeah. So we linked to the Treasury report in there if community members want to take a deeper look. And then, we skipped over, but Hedera did add 2 new members to the C-suite, chief of staff and then CFO. So good stuff there. Good stuff. So let's keep it going here. Let's go down to the staking section. Okay. So this will be our final section of the report before we kind of close things out. We touched on it earlier, the HIPs, right? It started with HIP 406 staking, and Hedera has been moving through this multi-phase rollout to bring staking live onto the network, okay? In October, phase 3 of staking was launched, and that brought on staking rewards, okay? I see here that at the end of Q4, approximately 32 billion HBAR were staked across 21,000 stakers. And this includes some of the Hedera Treasury and then Swirlds and Swirlds Labs. The final phase of staking phase 4 is expected to go live fairly soon. So could you guys touch on staking, how the rollout has gone, what type of staking adoption we're currently seeing on the network, and when do we think staking's rollout will be completed?
We've seen incredible adoption of protocol-based native staking within our ecosystem with over 20,000 unique addresses to date, staking over 32 billion HBAR. So note though, Hedera Treasury, Swirls Labs are all staking a portion of their treasury to allow the validator nodes to meet the minimum thresholds. This was a decision with security in mind. Additionally, protocols like Stater and Saucer Swap have connected to network staking to try to satisfy the community's desire to contribute to the securing of the network. So we continue to see that. We've had a couple of other applications and wallets that are trying to get fairly creative and allowing those that are storing their HBAR on ledger devices to be able to stake those, though we don't have native ledger support yet. This was not a Q4, this is a Q1 development, but hopefully we'll have more to talk about in this area in Q1.
Yep, looking forward to the continued growth of staking. So that brings us to the closing summary of this call. Okay, I think we touched on a lot, so to just briefly recap. Q4 was a rough quarter for the industry, primarily driven by FTX, but Hedera did see strong levels of growth. We saw transfer volume and transactions increase by 123% and 70% respectively. That growth was primarily driven by the launch of 2 new DEXs, right? So Healy Swap and Bubble Swap, which are now complementing Saucer Swap, and the continued adoption and growth of the NFT and gaming ecosystems. I think there's a lot to be excited about from those 2 sectors. And then, yeah, we're seeing pretty much consistent growth across each of the Hedera network services. And Lionel gave us some good descriptions of what each of those services are. So going forward now, we're in 2023. We're about halfway through Q1. What can the Hedera community look forward to in 2023, right? Are there any big developments that we should keep an eye on? Any specific network services, any protocols, anything the community should be looking out for as we get into 2023 and hopefully start to leave this bear market?
Well, in preparation for this call, Lionel and I were going to say we look forward to hitting 4 billion transactions on the network, but that's already happened. So now I guess we have to say we're looking forward to hitting 5 billion transactions on the network. What's great about this is we're regularly seeing hundreds of transactions per second. We believe with the continued go live of many of the grants that we've made over the course of last year going live, we're going to continue to see that number increase. What is awesome to me is that we've seen this kind of throughput and increase with no issues. And that's a testament to the community. That's a testament to Lionel's team and the quality of code that they're writing. And, I think you're going to continue to see great benefits in terms of increased NFT activity, more DEXs coming live, more applications coming live. And so I think 2023 is going to be a promising year for us.
Totally. Lionel, anything you want to add before we sign off here?
No, I'm going to second everything Shayne said. We have a lot to deliver on the development side. The community has more suggestions, and collectively we have to work on prioritizing, on the smart contract side, which is one of the key elements that I may want to call out in the coming, 1 to 2 quarters now, is as we are really increasing our Ethereum compatibility to the tooling and all the applications. It's going to make it so seamless for applications to run on Hedera that I believe that the competitive advantage we have in the performance and governance and regulatory position and so forth in terms of having a governance of large enterprises and so forth is making it very appealing to quite a few developers, small and big companies, to be fair, Web3 and Web2 companies. So I'm very eager to continue the journey, and I think we'll have very interesting stories to tell quarter this year.
Totally agree. I still think it's the early days for the Hedera ecosystem, but the foundation is being set and things are starting to look upwards. So that's it for this call. This was the Hedera Q4 2022 analyst call. Be on the lookout for the Q1 2023 report in a few weeks. We'll likely have another analyst call after that report. And Lionel, Shayne, thanks for helping on today. I think this was fantastic. I learned a lot. I'm sure the community learned a lot. And looking forward to continuing to see the development of the ecosystem. So thanks a ton, guys.
Thanks so much, Nick. Really appreciate it.